Welcome to Miles in Conversation, and today's guest is Aakhu from Better Marketing Mastery. And Ankh, how did you get into Better Marketing Mastery?
Okay.
How did you start your journey?
All right. So, you know, I am currently based in Atlanta. I moved to America as a teenager from the Bahamas, and to make it's kind of a long story, so I'll cut it really short. I took a holistic health training with a teacher by the name of Laila Africa, Dr. Africa, as he's commonly known. He's very popular, or fairly popular in the alternative health arena in the United States. He does a certification in holistic health training, and I thought at the time that what I would be doing would be, kind of transforming myself into more of a holistic health personality. And so I took that course, and that course really radically shifted my mind about health, my concepts about health. I thought I was doing pretty well at the time. I was vegetarian and a lot of other things. So I thought I would, give myself a pat on the back for being relatively, what I would consider healthy. And of course, he completely destroyed any notions that I had of that, and went so far down the rabbit hole in terms of what health is, that it just really jarred me. And I think the most important thing that he said for me, as he said so many things that kind of blew my mind, it was a 30-hour course. And I think by the third hour, I was overwhelmed. Like I had to walk out of the room. Like I couldn't take anymore.
Wow.
It was just frying too many brain cells, and synapses were, dysfunctioning, and all kinds of things were happening. And I came back in, and he was talking about our relationship to food. And one of the things that he said that was very powerful to me was that that we as human beings don't eat for nutrition. We eat because we have been successfully marketed to. And that was a huge aha moment for me. It was like, wow, when people are at the hungriest, if you give them the most healthy thing to eat at that moment, they probably wouldn't want to touch it with a 10-foot pole, right?
Is that because of our conditioning due to the marketing?
Exactly.
Okay.
Right.
Okay.
So usually when people are hungry, that's when they get the junk food, and when you're really hungry, you go for the junk. and that was just a powerful point for me, because I hadn't looked at it that way or conceptualized it that way, about the influence of marketing, how ubiquitous its influence is on everything that we're doing, how much just the basic notions of what we think, eating is more related to marketing than it is. We've been marketed 3 meals a day. We've been marketed, this is the way you need to do it. You got to have, dairy and this 6 servings of this and 5 servings of that. And all of that is really put out, when you look at it, by the very companies that are selling us these things. So I'm not saying not all of it is good, but I'm saying it is at least should be put an asterisk next to it if we are, selling it to you. It's like, if I'm selling you milk, I definitely want you to drink it, 3 to 25 times a day, just for your own good. Because, there's nothing like healthy pocketbooks. It's an amazing thing to have healthy pocketbooks. So this is what he was saying. And so I was taking notes, and he said something that was even more profound. He said that, to be honest with you, in the context of healing, in many ways, right? And keep in mind, he's talking to a group of people who are potential healers, right? People who are looking to help other people with their health. He says, in many ways, we don't need more healers. We need better marketers. And I wrote that down. We need better marketers. And later on that day, Better Marketing Mastery was born.
Tell me, what's the difference between the market that you're engaged in and mainstream marketing? And
Okay.
so can you kind of talk us through that?
Yeah. So I'm trained in what's called guerrilla marketing. Guerrilla marketing is a system that was a marketing system that was specifically designed for small businesses.
Mm-hmm.
In the late 70s, a guy by the name of J. Conrad Levinson was teaching a small business class at UCal Berkeley.
Mm-hmm.
And he had several students. This is as we're moving into the Silicon Valley, as we're coming in, just before that whole thing takes off, right? So these are the very first people, and he was working with a lot of students who were what he called hippies, young men with long hair and just a little different, not so much corporate types, but had big ideas, big
Mm-hmm.
things they wanted to do in the world, right? And a few of his early students were people like Bill Gates, Michael Dell, Steve Jobs. These were people who were his early students at that time. And so, he had a very pivotal role in the tech movement, Silicon Valley, all these kinds of things. He had a pivotal role in terms of them being able to market themselves to a certain level. So what guerrilla marketing essentially says is that with ingenuity, with more creativity, with more specialized knowledge, with a little bit more focus on time, we don't have to use as much money to market ourselves, right?
Mm-hmm.
So in the 70s and still to this day, marketing fundamentally was you have to have big resources to be able to do it,
Mm-hmm.
right? You have to have millions and billions, especially if you're thinking on a national, international level,
yeah.
global level. This you need a marketing budget that's in the millions. Just to give you an example of what I'm talking about, Walmart, which is primarily in America only, spends about $2.5 billion with a B every year on advertising. So the question is, how is it even remotely possible for me, a small guy with an idea, to compete with somebody who can move at that level financially, right? And it is a process. So what we're saying is then, or what he did was he created these students came to him and were looking for a system, and he went around researching libraries and et cetera, and couldn't find one. And so he essentially created one, which became the first book, Guerrilla Marketing, which is now in its, before he died, it was in his 4th edition. So you can find that online, along with a host of other guerrilla marketing books. It's one of the most successful marketing brands for small business, right? Because it's the one that really focuses on that. And so in about 2007 or so, I took their training, and I became a trained guerrilla marketing consultant. The reason why I was drawn to it was because in my environment, a lot of the businesses I was working around, I was learning. I told you I started a tutoring service, etc. And I always had kind of a knack for marketing, and so I consistently had a good rate of customers, etc., etc. But a lot of my friends who are also small business people, entrepreneurs, technicians, etc., were struggling, and they would constantly say to me. They would say things like, how do you get customers? I'm struggling here. Can you? And eventually they said, can you help me? Right. And this is actually coincides with the moment I was telling you about the holistic health. Right. So around the same, just after that, I started getting into this. And so I started working on figuring out a way to do it. And I thought I needed some kind of a framework for actually working on that marketing. And so I took the training with guerrilla marketing. Turned out that about 80% of what I was doing was what guerrilla marketing was saying. There was only maybe 2 or 3 pieces to their system, 12-step, 10-step system, that I wasn't actually doing. And that was the light going off for me, which was tracking and testing, right? That marketing becomes a science once you track and test what you're doing. Now, to an accountant, that actually makes complete sense, right?
Of course.
Right. But to many business people, that's not how they think about marketing. They just do stuff, and they don't know what did what. They can't tell you if the flyers did it or is the website working. If they don't know. If you ask them, what does a customer cost? They have no idea, right? And I promise you, if you don't know what it costs you to get a customer, you can't really do much in marketing, and you're not going to do much in marketing, right? Until you even get to that level. So this is what guerrilla marketing brought to the forefront. And so I kind of, tweaked their system and integrated with what I already had and came up with the system that we use here at Better Marketing Mastery for launching campaigns for small business. Successful marketing is counterintuitive to the way that the average business person thinks.
Are you able to illuminate or?
Let me give it a shot. since you put me on the spot and I'm supposed to be a marketing guy, I got to at least give it a shot or go down, giving it all I got, right? So there's a book called E-Myth that talks
Yep.
about
Michael Gerber, very famous.
Right. Okay. So, and basically what it says is that most small business people are technicians.
Mm-hmm.
And so they're not necessarily business people they're not trained. They don't come with those skills. They don't come. And so what they tend to do is they tend to want to work on what they know. Right. So if I'm a plumber, I'm not so skilled in the marketing side of things, and I don't know how to turn that into an actual system for doing things. And the goal of entrepreneurship is actually to not be in the business, but to be outside of the business, free of the business. So the business in itself, in its ideal state, is actually kind of a liberation device. It frees you up from your need to participate in the society in a work-related way. So most wealthy people don't necessarily work for money. This blows the mind of people who all their life have been working for money, right? But there is ways that you don't have to work for money. And so as an entrepreneur, if you learn how to build successful systems, you don't necessarily have to work for money. But because we have been socialized to work for money, our whole orientation, by and large, puts us at odds with the orientation that we need to be successful. Because then most entrepreneurs essentially are more solopreneurs, or more do-it-yourselfers, and they're so committed to getting it all done themselves, they don't realize that the whole name of the game is to figure out how to not do it yourself. And that's very complex to really work yourself around psychologically and so on, especially if you are, for instance, if you're a plumber and somebody says, well, if you're going to build a plumbing business, don't be the plumber, that is like a disconnect at that point, right? So how do you really come up with a business model that is informed by that type of orientation? It is the question for many people who are starting a business.
I understand that you've actually got a free webinar taking place, and it's called Speed Monetization.
Yes.
Who should come on that course, and basically what will they learn?
Okay. So speed monetization is basically, so when I got into working with clients, etc., I noticed within the world of making money, there's a couple of angles you can take, right? To make a lot of money is kind of the long range thing, right? To build a business and most of the businesses that I was dealing with were people who had more immediate issues, right? They didn't have, okay, we're going to put 3 years into a campaign so that you take the company to, they were more like
IPO, yeah.
Right, exactly. We need to pay the bills in 30 days or in 60 days or in 90 days. What can we do in that time? And so, so in that time, I've been forced to really work within that context of helping people to make money in shorter bursts of time by really honing in on some key things about, how you condense the marketing process, right? How do you shorten up the curve? Because marketing typically, in many ways, contrary to popular belief, marketing is more like farming in terms of like planting a seed and then, time goes by, you continue to nurture and you continue to nurture and you continue to nurture. And then one day a tree grows up and then the next year it comes around again and then it finally bears fruit. And so what happens is many people who get into business have immediate needs. And so they don't really have the luxury of having, 5 years of funding and all that to kind of sit and build to build the infrastructure of the company, the system of the company that we're talking about, the marketing system out and all that. They don't have that luxury. And so they need to kind of build incrementally as they go. Speed monetization is for those types of people who are looking more for immediate needs and getting, kind of a rush of cash, a rush of revenue, rush of profits into the company as soon as possible, so that you can begin to prop up the company so it becomes stabilized in terms of its revenue. And once you become stable in terms of revenue, then you're in a much better position to kind of plan for the future. So I'll give you an example of a story. I sat with a guy, a client of mine, and he was, so he's kind of a local business owner. and he does a cleaning service. He goes around, he essentially has a cleaning service for houses that uses natural products, no chemicals, et cetera, et cetera. Really nice idea of cleaning your house in an extraordinary way without using anything poisonous or toxic for you and your children. And we sat, and he was thinking about all these things that he had to do to promote and all that, because, you know, he's kind of low-keyed, and he had and he didn't have, you know, a big website. He didn't have a big, you know, anything, right? And so, you know, he was really expecting that we would have to, you know, spend a lot of money to really get the marketing going. And I asked him, you know, essentially one question, you know, how long have you been in business? How many customers have you had over that time, right? And he told me he had like 500 customers. So at that time, and he'd been in business for, you know, struggling along for maybe 10 years, something to that effect. Mm-hmm. Just from that, we were able to sit there, then and there, and create a 4-day campaign for him, right? 4-day campaign, really simple campaign. He didn't have high technology. He only had his phone contact. And basically we were able to turn that into a campaign within those 4 days, those next 4 days. He had more business that he could handle for the next 6 months, right? Now, that's not going to happen in every situation, guaranteed. The circumstances vary. And so that was a situation where everything kind of lined up for us just right to make a move quickly.
And that's because you're talking to his existing 500 people.
That's one of the strategies right there.
Who are basically warm to him. Okay,
right.
Got it.
And what actually do you need to do to galvanize those 500 people, right? Yeah. Or a percentage of them. In this case, really maybe 30 of them, right? 40 of them. But for him, because of the way he works and because of the way we looked at the way his business was structured. So we figured out certain things that he didn't even recognize himself, right? In the speed monetization, I can talk more about this. But, you know, you have to know things like your customer value and other things like that. And that allows you to play with the marketing in very different ways when you understand that. So he was just he was in such a great position, and he had no idea or no clue what that meant, because that's not the way he thought about the business. So bringing a marketing person in who could just look at it and say, oh, this is amazing what you've done, and you're underperforming terribly just because you're not just doing enough messaging to this particular audience right here, right? And that was able to, you know, transform the whole process. So that's a kind of quick example of what could happen in kind of, you know, more or less the best of circumstances. And most people fall somewhere between. I strive, even if you're a startup, there are things you can do as a startup that can move you along very quickly as well. It's just a little bit more complex to execute. And so it depends on where the people are.
Let me ask a question then, just so we catch everybody. I want to imagine someone who's actually in pre-startup stage, and they've got pen and paper.
Yes.
And they're writing down their business plan, and now they've come into a section called marketing plan.
Yes.
What do they do?
Okay. So once you're clear, the first thing you need to be clear when you do your marketing is that clear of your target market. Mm-hmm. And when we say target market, it's a word that people think that you just kind of select an audience, and that's not really what we're doing. What we're doing is we're looking for the people who will be most responsive and financially prepared for what you're offering. So get your target market right is a big thing, because if you can nail that, right, what we call a hot target market. And a hot target market are those people that are passionate about what it is that you're doing. Typically, what we want to do in marketing is we want to make selling superfluous, right? But the point is, if there's something that one was interested in already, then the selling process becomes a lot easier. Because if you want it, then it's just negotiation in terms of what has to happen for you to get it. And if that works well, then it's a lot easier. So I would say get your target marketing right, get your messaging right, right? You know, and that means your offer, right? And you want your offer to be compelling. Determine what it is that you need to offer the world. And I would say focus on some key offers first. In other words, if you have a store and you have 17 different products in your store and 35 different things and all that stuff, focus on which ones are the most profitable potentially for you, right? Which one could kind of drive the business, and do something special around those offerings, right? So target market, which is identify the right people, know where to find them, the media, right? Are they on Instagram, Facebook? Are they offline? Are they, walk-ins? Are they coming to the website? Whatever the case is, figure out where they are and make sure you meet them off at the pass and you have this compelling message in front of them. So if a simple one-page marketing plan would be, which we do in guerrilla marketing, anyway. But I'll just walk you through that really quickly. So in guerrilla marketing, we'll say, what is my my target market is people who like, fancy suits, right? Boom. My competitive advantage is I can give premium suits at the best prices, right? That's my competitive advantage. And I can say, what other benefits are there to doing business with me, right? My customer service is great. I take extra care. I deliver it to their doorstep, whatever the case may be, right? So those are the benefits I'm offering that. And then we'll say, well, how do I reach that audience of people, right? With which tools? So I might say, well, I'll have these shopping hours, right? So that they can come to my store. Or if I'm doing delivery, they can order online at the website if they go here. And I'll use ads, Google ads, to draw them to that particular ad and link them to the website, etc. Right? So we draw that out, and then we just outline, what our niche is, right? What do we do and who do we do it for, right? Mm-hmm. So we do premium suits at the best prices for people who love, fine style, fashion, high fashion, however we want to term that, right? And then the final part of that is, the business identity, right? What does your business stand for, right? So my suit company, it stands for, elegance, prestige, right? That kind of thing. Mm-hmm. And then the last thing is, what's our marketing budget? And for us, we would say that a marketing budget would be, in guerrilla marketing, about 5% of what you intend to earn. Right. So if you sit down with a marketing consultant and say, I want to earn $1 million, then you need to cost $50,000 to get started. Right.
Okay. That's interesting. So you've got a 5% budget, and would you basically maintain that on a kind of rolling basis? You just make sure that you have 5% always available for marketing. Is that how you kind of model it?
So generally, in general business, in the Small Business Association here in America, it is determined that the average business spends about 11% of its revenue on marketing.
Okay.
Right. So about 11%. In guerrilla marketing, we say we can cut that in half.
Okay.
Right. And to me, if you're a startup, though, startups need to spend more on marketing because they have more, ground to cover in terms of getting off the ground, getting an awareness, and that kind of thing. So if you're a startup, I would say, barring understanding some of the free strategies that you can use well, if you can implement those. I think too many businesses that are at a startup level are trying to use all the free marketing stuff. And that can be problematic because, one, it takes a lot of time to implement, and it's a learning curve and all that. And you don't want to really start there. I would say start with low budget marketing, not high budget marketing, but low budget marketing, because it'll catalyze the wheel enough for you to get moving. And as you get moving, then you can focus on some of the free stuff more if you want to. Mm-hmm. So that's a little tip there on how to get started.
I get all of that. So 8 p.m. UK time.
That link for you. We'll have to give you that link later. Is that okay?
No, the link is going to be right here on the screen.
Okay. So I'm going to get that link to you. Make sure you get the link so that people can sign up for that.
So that'd be webinar. So speed monetization, 8 p.m. UK time.
Yes.
And absolutely. Everybody who basically is either in business or, as we discussed earlier, if you're in the startup phase, there's also something of value for you too.
Yeah, absolutely. We live in the age of monetization, right? We know that, money dominates a lot of our world, right? There's not too much we can do without the interaction of money. And I think it's important for entrepreneurs to really master monetization, understand the science of how it works, the philosophy of how it works. And if you can get clear on how it works. So we're going to talk about kind of the pillars of monetization itself. What makes monetization what it is? What is it that allows us to make money? What's happening when the exchange is happening between two people? What really is driving that? You asked the question, what is behind marketing? And there's a word that we really haven't mentioned today that's called value.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a kind of an abstraction, but it's the most important word in business, right? If you understand how to play the value game, then you understand how to play the monetization game. And if you don't understand what I just said, then you need to check us out at the Speed Monetization webinar, because you're going to walk away from that very clear on what the value game is.
That's fantastic. Well, this has been Miles in conversation with Aakhu from Better Marketing Mastery. And what you've heard today is of interest to you. Well, then we'll catch you on the Speed Monetization free webinar. And it's free 1-hour webinar. And come along and check us out and hear what the master has to say on that subject. Aunkh, it's been an absolute pleasure talking to you.
All right, thank you.
Bye-bye now.